Oh, hello. I'm just sorting out things here that are actually very relevant to the subject of this video. You know, all these lovely goodies with the costumed persons of youth will descend upon, I'm sure, later on. And what? No, certainly not. They're mine. You're not getting them. Don't even think of it. No, what a cheek. Anyway, to the video. This is a video in honor of, as we would say here in Ireland, the day that's in it. That day being the 1st of November. As Halloween is celebrated in many parts of the world on the night of the 31st of October and into the morning of the 1st of November, I'm sure many of those dressing up in fancy costumes, going from door to door, trick-or-treating, dancing around bonfires and all that sort of thing, would be quite surprised to know that they are actually celebrating something that dates back 5,000 years. And we know that, you see, because there are Neolithic cairns here in Ireland, and they are aligned with sunrise on that date. So that's how we're able to date Samhain quite accurately. And Ireland can claim responsibility for it. Oh yes, the ancient pre-Celtic Fire Festival called Samhain, one that symbolically divided the year into light and dark, the lighter one being the summer and the darker one the winter, ending the harvest season, bye-bye to summer and little bunny rabbits hopping around and flowers and all that kind of thing, and ushering in the winter with all the ice and the snow and all that lovely stuff. And in keeping with the ghostly, spooky aspect of Halloween today, at this time, the division between the world of life and the world of death, the veil, I suppose we may call it, well, the veil was thought to be at its thinnest at this time of year, and that permitted spirits to pass through it. The ghosties, ghoulies, and lang-legged beasties, as the Scottish poet Robert Burns so eloquently put it. Now, Samhain began at sunset on the 31st of October, and it ended at sunset on the 1st of November, because the day in ancient times, you see, was regarded as going from one sunset to the next. And it was one of the four great seasonal festivals that occurred each year here in Ireland long ago, and in some other Celtic regions as well, such as Scotland and the Isle of Man. And they were Samhain on the 1st of November, Imbolc on the 1st of February, Beltane on the 1st of May, and Lunasa on the 1st of August. Now, these are all some 2,000 years old from what documentation of them survives. Though given the age of Samhain, which actually dates from before the Celtic people even arrived in Ireland, well, I think we may assume that they too are actually much older. I think potentially, well, all of them are probably of a similar age. That would just seem logical. In practice, now it seems that they were not always celebrated on the 1st of the month. No, they could be celebrated on another day for various reasons. Well, on the first Sunday of the month in later times, for example, when Christianity came in and began to influence the older pagan ideas. But the 1st of the month, well, that's the official date, so we may as well go along with that one. For a brief time, there would have been no fires burning in Ireland on Samhain, or at least that was the intention. I suppose they might have missed a few, because all domestic fires of all kinds would have been extinguished across the land, in the home, in the forge. All the fires would have been extinguished, and for a brief period, Ireland would have been completely fireless. Then there would be a great fire, a great ceremonial fire, kindled by the chief druid of the Ard Rí Heron, or the High King of Ireland, and he would do that on the Hill of Ward. And then regional fires would be lit in the realms of all the various local kings, and there were kings all over the place in those days. You could hardly throw a stone in any direction without hitting a king of some kind. Well, sorry about that. Your Highness. I hope it didn't hurt. Yeah. Oh well, yeah, it's meant to be pretty careful in those days. But what would happen then? All the people who were fireless, they would like torches, or they would carry containers of burning material back from these various ceremonial fires, and they would take it back to their homes and rekindle their own household fires in the grate, in the forge, and so on. And public fires would be lit on high places. There would be fires burning right across the country on hilltops. Now, of course, there were various celebrations as well, not just fires. There was a ritual mourning for the death of summer. The summer's gone, sort of thing. And there would have been horse races and markets and fairs, and of course, in ancient Ireland, there was never any reason turned down to have a fair or a marketplace or a festival or indeed to get drunk. It was Ireland after all. Just about anything usually had some kind of a celebration attached to it. But despite all these celebrations, there was also an element of fear associated with this time of year. Oh yes, quite a lot of superstitious fear. This was a society that was deeply rooted in a whole host of superstitions. I mean, they had superstitions about everything. And Samhain was a good example of that, since it was believed that the veil between our world and the world of the dead was very thin at this time, as I said, easily penetrated. So that the spirits of the dead, as well as various entities, undesirable malevolent forces, and fairies, they could move freely between the two. And for that reason, the Druids saw it as the best time to foretell the future, using the ability to connect more readily with available spirits, which made perfect sense, I suppose, when you think about it. Offerings would be made to the spirits and the fairies. Well, fairies. Oh, yes, fairies. See, in ancient Ireland, fairies were not seen as particularly friendly. Oh no, they were not lovely little things, with pretty wings and fluttering around at the bottom of your garden, being also charming and oh no, not by a very long way, I assure you. And care had to be taken not to upset them, as well as guarding against them should they come as the fairy host. And the fairy host, that was seen as an airborne collection of spirits of the restless dead, who they might even be on the hunt for people to steal away back to their own world. You had to keep an eye out for that lot, I can assure you. Now, don't get me wrong, the fairies could be very helpful and they could be beneficial to humans, but only if they were treated with respect. But if they were disrespected, well, we didn't want to do that. They could be, well, if you disrespected them, they could react with very unfairies in the bottom of your garden, anger and cruelty. So you were very, very nice to the fairies. People would burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the spirits, as well as various deities, and they would wear costumes too, things like animal heads or skins, partly, this is a good one, partly to visit the homes of people pretending sometimes to be the actual spirits of the dead or fairies, and getting offerings to keep them in a good mood, which I'm sure fooled absolutely nobody. But this had another use as well. Oh yes, dressing like spirits. You see, now this was really an interesting one. Dressing like spirits was also seen as a protection from the genuine spirits, especially the fairy host. I mean, you only had to watch them. And those real spirits, you see, they would mistake the dressed up people spirits for actual spirits like themselves, and then they'd ignore them. Yes. It didn't say much for the spirit's power of observation, did it? But who am I to question the wisdom of the ancients, or the lack of it? There were fires, of course, lit everywhere, as I said, and fires offered some protection from spirits, of course. Fire was always seen as a protection against creepy things from beyond. And turnips. Now, turnips would be carved with faces, and those faces on these carved turnips would be so scary that they'd scare the spirits away. Yes. Terrifying turnips. A bit hard to credit, really, but maybe the spirits are just cowardly custard fraidy cats. You know, oh my God, there's a carved turnip. We're going back through the veil. Yes, we're not going to. Somehow, I don't think so, really. Of course, in later times, the turnips became the pumpkins that are such a feature of Halloween today. But you know, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Why not still carve a turnip? I mean, I think it would be quite a link with the past, if you like, sort of, you know, get back to the roots kind of thing. Um, Carve maybe a turnip and a pumpkin, have a turnip, a pumpkin, a turnip, a pumpkin. You know, I think it would be rather nice to do that because, of course, there weren't any pumpkins around at that time, and turnips would have been a staple for the well, for the common people. They were cheap, they were easy to grow, and of course the ordinary common hoi polloi persons would have enjoyed them. You probably didn't find them on the tables of the gentry. They were probably a bit too common for them. You know. But anyway, so there's an idea now. Get a turnip and have a go at carving that. Given the supposed thinness of the veil, departed family members would be invited to dine with the still living family members, in spirit at least, and you know, extra plates would be set for them at the table, and well, other spirits would also be welcomed, and they'd be offered food and drink, and you know, always good to have friendly spirits on your side. Oh, yes. Now, for some reason, which is a bit hard to fathom, I suppose, the departed ones never actually ate or drank any of the food and drink that was left out for them. No, I've no doubt that offerings left outside for that, you know, for the spirits sort of going past to enjoy were probably partaken of by passing animals who were no doubt very pleased to oblige. And you know, sad to say, and I do think it's quite sad actually. Despite the well-meant invitations, the kindness being offered to the departed ones from their surviving relatives, the departed ancestors never even turned up. You know, they just ignored. They ignored the invitations, never showed up. Well, I'm sure the diners would have vacated the premises rather rapidly if they had. But you know, it was the thought. It was the thought that counted. But I do think they might at least have sent a thank you, but we can't attend. You know, it would have been a polite thing to do. Now, quite how they would have consumed food and drink as spirits, you know, without corporal bodies, well, that's a bit puzzling. You know, I mean, it would have gone straight through them, wouldn't it? It would have been a right old mess on the floor in that case. Now, another tradition was that a quantity of straw would have been left in the field after the harvest was gathered, ready for sowing, and that would have been for the puka. Now, the puka was a shape-shifting creature. It could take very many forms, though usually it appeared as a dark, normally black, sleek horse with luminescent golden eyes and a long flowing mane and tail. It was quite an impressive animal, and Solon was known as the puka day. But you see, a puka finding no straw left for it out in the field, you know, no straw, and on its own day of all days, well, I mean, couldn't do that now, could you? You know, it would have been seriously offended. That nobody wanted that. Oh no, you didn't want an angry puka trotting around looking for things to do. No, not that long way. You see, they could be very well mischievous, to put it mildly. They could damage things. They could scare animals, and generally make quite a nuisance of themselves. So you kept on the right side of the puka. You know, oddly enough, here's a strange thing. Even today, in our less than superstitious times, some reapers will still leave a small bit of the harvest untouched in the field, a little bit there, completely untouched, and that is seen as the puka's share. Well, better safe than sorry, I always say. I mean, you never know. Many great events in ancient Celtic folklore occurred at this time for some reason or other. Legends, you know, grew up around it, such as the epic battle between the Tuatha De Danann and the evil Fomorians, or how Finn MacCool, that great Irish hero, defeated Ailinn the Burner when that charming gentleman came to burn the hill of Tara. which for him had become a sort of annual event. I mean, he loved burning the Hill of Tara. I mean, it was wooden buildings with thatched roofs, so it burned rather well, and he took considerable advantage of that. He was said to play the harp, you see, and he would sing beautiful songs which would lull people to sleep. And then he'd burn all the buildings while they were sleeping. And he would burn down the Hill of Tara to ashes every year at Samhain, using his fiery breath after, as I said first, lulling the inhabitants to sleep with his magically beautiful music. You know, they go, oh, gosh, oh, oh, there's a terrible smell of smoke. Oh, sure, the Hill of Tara is on fire. Oh, God, it must be Samhain again. Yes, it had become rather a annual event, as I said. Now, I'm not sure why he did that, or indeed why he did it so, but he did. That's all we need to know. But no, Finn McCool had had enough of that. He wasn't having any more of this. So one Samhain, he inhaled the poison from his magic spear. Oh, whoa, yeah. Whew. And you see, its effect, well, that kept him awake, and he was immune to the magic music. And he slew the evil pyromaniac harpist. Yes! That was the end of the harpist. And by doing so, you see, not only did he stop the Ard Rí having to rebuild Tara every year, and just imagine, you know, the insurance premiums must have been astronomical, like, well, 10,000 cattle and 5,000 sheep or something. But his far-fighting actions won him the leadership of the great warrior band known as the Fianna. So he did quite well out of that. Now then Christianity arrived. And the various pagan festivals, they began to decline as conversion to the new faith from distant Palestine increased. But the church initially, they didn't try to stamp out the pagan beliefs as such. Oh, no, not by a long way. You know, they actually used pagan connections to help that conversion. You know, baptizing people with water from the former pagan sacred wells, for example, or you know, building churches in or near sacred groves, thus making a connection with the former beliefs that assisted with the conversion to the new belief. Even adapting the great Celtic triple goddess Brigid to that end, giving her just a single identity, popping a nice, lovely, shiny halo on her head. Oh, it's gorgeous, you know, and calling her Saint Brigid. You know, her new feast day was simply the old pagan day of worship, and many of her old symbols even were retained, such as an everlasting fire that had been tended by female druids, and was now tended by nuns. It was perfect. You see, the church in Ireland, they discovered psychology centuries before Sigmund Freud came along. I mean, they could have taught him a few lessons, I can assure you. In the year 601 A.D., Pope Gregory I, well, he sent a man called Mellitus to England, appointed him Archbishop of Canterbury and the first Bishop of London. But the new bishop found resistance from the pagans of London. You know, his conversion efforts were not progressing smoothly by a long. In fact, they weren't progressing at all. They were completely stalled. So the Pope wrote him a letter. And the letter was actually preserved by the Venerable Bede, so we know what he said. And in it, Gregory suggested that conversion of the pagans should be undertaken gradually. You know, let's get a bit of subtlety into this. And to give it a sort of helping hand, he suggested that pagan rituals and customs should be adapted to serve as Christian ones. Things that had been pagan, and that's very bad and incredibly evil. Well, they will become Christian, and thus very good and incredibly holy, even if they were exactly the same as they had been before, which they were. Now, I'm sure he was well aware that such things were already being done in some places, especially here in Ireland, where, you know, bathing in the waters of a pagan sacred well, that would have been sinful and evil, oh, so evil. But naming the well after a saint and then pouring its water over somebody's head, well, that would be good and holy, despite the water being exactly the same as it always had been. You know, observances honouring the dead began to coincide with the pagan Samhain in various places. And the date was officially set in the 8th century when Pope Gregory III dedicated a chapel in Rome's St. Peter's Basilica in honour of all saints, both those officially canonised and those unknown, and this was called All Saints' Day. And he did it on November the 1st. All Saints' Day, or All Souls' Day. It was also known as All Hallows' Day, the Feast of All Saints, the Feast of All Hallows, the Solemnity of All Saints, the Commemoration of All the Faithful Departed, the Day of the Dead, and Hallowmas. There are plenty of titles there to choose from. Now, to begin with, well, this is purely a local tradition. It was limited to Rome and the environs. But in 1837, Pope Gregory IV, he ordered the observance of All Saints' Day on November the 1st for the entire Christian church. And this is where our modern Halloween came about, from All Hallows, a phrase that's found in Old English. The term All Hallows Eve, well, that's not recorded until 1556. In Old English, hallowed meant something that was holy, something that was sanctified, something that was really awfully good. And All Hallows, or All Saints' Day, was celebrated the night before All Hallows Eve, being an evening of fasting and prayer, and everybody being ever so good and getting all holy, ready for the next day, preparing for the following feast day. Now, gradually over time, Hallows Eve became Halloween and later Halloween, which simply means the evening before Hallows. As time went on, All Saints' Day began to be celebrated in a very, very similar way to Samhain, with bonfires and people dressing up in costumes, often trying to look like saints, angels, or devils. The old pagan celebrations, you see, they began to seep back into it. It was a bit subtle. It was a bit subtle, though of course with the trappings of Christianity to sort of nice it up a bit. You couldn't have it completely pagan. Those dressing up to resemble, saints, say, rather than the spirits of the dead, for example, which was, I suppose you could say it was the same thing, only different. The term trick-or-treat, which is, of course, popular now, is very recent. It was first used as recently, in fact, as 1927. But the idea of going from house to house to obtain gifts of some kind is an old one, in its sort of more modern form, at least as far back as the 15th century, and probably much earlier, when poor people would dress up in costumes and then they'd go to the houses of wealthy families. And of course, the wealthy families would want to look very nice and beneficial. Oh yes, we have to help our poor neighbours. Yes, there you go. Enjoy that. And they would be given little pastries. Now these pastries were called soul cakes, but they didn't get them for nothing. Oh no, the gentry weren't that fond of charity. I can assure you. While they were giving things out, they wanted something in return. As they say, you don't get nothing for nothing. And in exchange for getting these soul cakes, the recipients would pray for the souls of the homeowner's departed relatives, and that was known as souling. And the practice was later taken up by children, and they go from door to door asking for gifts, such as food, money, and ale. Yes, that's what I said. There's nothing wrong with your hearing. Ale. Well, it was the Middle Ages, after all. What do you expect, There's an English souling rhyme from that time, which the soulers would chant, and it goes, a soul cake, have mercy on all Christian souls for a soul cake. Those soul cakes must have been awfully good. All that praying one had to do in order to get one. Your knees would be sore for days after all that. Souling was also known as guising, which came from disguising. And of course, the idea of putting on costumes of some kind and going around looking for gifts dated right back to the old pagan traditions of Samhain, as do our modern bonfires and the carving of things to scare away spirits. Only the pumpkin has been replaced by the humble turnip for that purpose, as I said earlier. The connections between paganism and modern Halloween, of course, are extremely strong when you actually go into it. The bonfires lit at Halloween, of course, are linked to the ancient fire rituals of Celtic times. So we no longer make sacrifices by fire. The police don't really care for that sort of thing at all. No, they do frown on it. We don't chuck produce. We certainly don't chuck small animals into the fire, much to the relief of small animals, I'm sure. Well, you know, the fires are a great way of getting rid of old furniture, you know, or other combustible things that you don't want. I've made use of that quite a few times myself. I mean, you know, why pay for some waste collection service when all you have to do is just sort of, well, you know, you just happen to leave it outside when children are going around collecting things for the local bonfire. It works every time. So there we have the history of Samhain, one of the great festivals of ancient Ireland that has lasted down to our own time, albeit in a drastically altered form, but still a living link with the past. So while you put on your Halloween costume and you take the kids out to annoy the neighbours and hopefully you return with a bucket full of goodies before jumping around a bonfire, assuming some nosy neighbour hasn't called the fire brigade about it, it's now just a soggy pile of charred mush, which is not much fun to jump around. Just remember your connection with the traditions of ancient Ireland, when the chief druid would kindle that mighty fire on the hill of Ward, and everyone would say, "Hurry up and get the fire lit! Sure 'tis bloody freezing in here, so it is. We're shaking with the cold. Get on with it, man!" Yes, I'm sure things like that did occur. Anyway, I shall now say goodbye until the next time. See you in the next video. Hopefully. Bye for now.